When Mark received the keys to an old abandoned trailer deep in the woods, it came as a shock. His father, who had passed away recently, hadn't been a part of Mark's life for over 15 years. To say their relationship was distant would be generous. In truth, Mark hadn't seen either of his parents since he was 3 years old. His grandmother had raised him, telling him little about the circumstances of his parents' sudden disappearance. Now 18 and legally an adult, Mark stood at the edge of a mossy trail, staring at the battered shell of a trailer that supposedly once belonged to his father. It was hidden among towering pines and thick undergrowth, as if nature itself had tried to erase it. Rust streaked the metal siding. Ivy crept up the corners. The windows were clouded with grime. He circled it, noting the sag in its frame, the stale smell that seemed to seep from the cracks. The trailer appeared forgotten by time. Yet here he was, holding a letter addressed to him in a handwriting he barely remembered and a key that matched the lock on the creaky door. Mark's heart pounded as he slipped the key in and turned. The lock gave with a reluctant click. The door groaned open, and a wave of stench rolled out. Mold, rot, and something worse. Covering his nose, Mark stepped inside. It was dim, lit only by the weak daylight filtering through the filmy windows. The place was a mess clothes scattered, a collapsed armchair, broken glass on the floor. Nature had begun to reclaim it. As he moved cautiously from room to room, trying not to gag, Mark heard something rustling. It came from the small kitchen. He froze. The noise grew louder, and suddenly the cabinet door burst open. A possum shot out, barreling past Mark and disappearing through the open door. He stumbled back and fell, his heart thudding. Then he laughed, shaky, relieved laugh. Just a possum. Then he saw it. Tucked in the corner of the cabinet was a notebook, dust-covered but intact. He reached for it, brushing off the grime. The name on the cover stopped him cold. Henry Peterson, his father. Mark hesitated, then opened it. The first few pages were mundane scribbled thoughts, odd musings, a few grocery lists. But then he found something different. A letter. It was addressed to him. My dearest son, it began. If you're reading this, then I am gone, but not in the way you might think. Mark's hands trembled as he read. His father explained that he and Mark's mother hadn't left willingly. They were forced to go into hiding because of something they had uncovered, a criminal conspiracy within a company Henry had once worked for. Henry had been an accountant, and during a routine audit, he stumbled across a vast fraud scheme involving powerful people. The more he dug, the worse it got. Mark read in stunned silence. The diary detailed their efforts to collect evidence without getting caught, the threats they received, and finally, the decision to disappear for Mark's safety. The last page of the diary had a number. Call this when you're ready, it said. Mark stared at the digits. The trailer, the diary, this number, it all felt surreal, but he had come this far. He took a deep breath and dialed. A woman answered. Before he could speak, she said, Mark, he froze. Who is this? There was a pause. I'm your mother, Judy. Mark nearly dropped the phone. She sounded older, but there was no mistaking the emotion in her voice. She was crying. Your father is here too. He's alive. The next few minutes passed in a blur. Judy told him they had been placed in witness protection by a trusted officer after their initial contact with the police led to their home being ransacked. They feared the criminal organization had infiltrated law enforcement itself. That's why they disappeared. That's why they left Mark with his grandmother. Tears streamed down Mark's face as he listened. Then Judy asked him to do something strange. Dig behind the trailer near a white lawn chair. You'll find something buried there, she said. Still dazed, Mark obeyed. Behind the trailer, just as she'd said, was an old plastic chair half swallowed by weeds. He dug with a broken table leg and soon hit something hard. It was a plastic-sealed binder. Inside were documents, bank transfers, contracts, handwritten notes, and a sealed photograph. Mark flipped through it, recognizing none of the names, but sensing the weight of the contents. The photo at the end showed 5 men, their faces clear, their expressions smug. On the back, scrawled in ink, the heads of the organization. He called his mother back. I found it, he said. She broke down in tears. You have the key to everything, Mark. That binder contains all the evidence we've been gathering. Those men, they destroyed lives. Now we can bring them down." She warned him not to go to the downtown police. "Too risky," she said. "Take it to the station, 2 towns over. Ask for the commanding officer." Mark didn't hesitate. He drove the evidence to the specified precinct. The commanding officer, a stern man with sharp eyes, took him seriously. In a closed room, a group of officers combed through the binder. As they connected the dots, their faces darkened. "This man," one said, pointing to the photo, "is the chief of police in North County." The revelation shook the room. By the next morning, arrests were made. The crime ring was dismantled, including several law enforcement officials who had been protecting it from within. And then, the knock on Mark's door. His heart pounded as he opened it. There stood his mother and father, free at last. They embraced for the first time in 15 years, tears falling, arms locked around each other. The past was behind them, the truth was out, and a family, long separated, was whole once more. Mark sat on the porch of the trailer for a long time, staring out into the thick wall of trees that surrounded him. The forest, still and silent, seemed to listen as he processed everything he had just discovered. The revelation that his parents weren't dead, that they had disappeared to protect him, and that they had trusted him with the evidence that could bring down a dangerous criminal empire was almost too much to comprehend. His hands trembled as he held the now dusty notebook and the binder that had been buried under the white garden chair. The scent of damp earth still clung to the plastic wrapping. The truth was more than he'd ever expected to find when he walked up to that trailer earlier that day. And yet, it also answered every silent question he'd buried in his heart for 15 years. He remembered his childhood vividly, his grandmother's soft hands braiding his hair, the sound of lullabies echoing in a small bedroom, the holidays they spent together, never speaking of his parents, but always feeling their absence. He remembered nights he spent staring at the stars, wondering where his mom and dad had gone, and whether they missed him as much as he missed them. Now he knew the answer. They had never stopped loving him. Back inside the trailer, he wandered slowly, now seeing the space through new eyes. He spotted small items his father had left behind, a faded photograph tucked inside a broken frame, a pair of old boots by the corner, a chipped mug still sitting in the sink. These weren't just trash or leftovers, they were remnants of a life lived in hiding, of fear, and most importantly, of hope. Hope that one day Mark would come, that he would find the truth and carry it forward. When he finally returned to his car and drove the 2 towns over to deliver the binder to the police, his heart pounded with every mile. He didn't know what would happen. Would the police believe him? Would they act on the evidence? Would this finally bring peace to the chaos that had robbed him of a normal family? At the police station, when the commanding officer and other detectives saw the documents and photo, the room fell silent. The mood shifted from skepticism to urgency. Mark watched their faces, saw the shock and alarm settle in their eyes, and he knew then that everything his parents had said was true. Days later, when the doorbell rang and he opened the door to see his parents standing there alive, safe, and free, was as if the missing pieces of his life had finally clicked into place. They rushed to him, arms outstretched, and the 3 embraced in a moment of raw emotion. It wasn't just about reunion. It was about healing, closure, and reclaiming the time stolen by fear. Mark knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. His parents had a lifetime of stories to share. They had missed birthdays, graduations, and quiet Sunday breakfasts. But now they had the chance to build something new, a future free from hiding. A family reunited, not just in blood, but in truth and love. As they sat down that evening to talk for hours, Mark looked at the notebook on the table, the diary that started it all. His father's handwriting had led him here. It was a legacy not of abandonment, but of courage, and Mark was ready to carry it forward.